So we're back again. We're back in. How many episodes did you record at Empower? A handful.
How many
can we use?
Yeah, probably 2.
Okay, that's good.
That's good. The Ambassador Mayorga one with Lisa will be really good.
Yeah,
I think it was really, really good. So
that's awesome.
It'd be nice to come out. Plus, had like Miss Bitcoin Universe and Ambassador Mayorga and Miss Bitcoin America with Lisa.
Oh man, that's like two like super women.
Yeah, like power women of Bitcoin. It's great. And we got a Satoshi is female T-shirt in here. So
there you go, celebrating that.
Yeah, this is like International Bitcoin Women of Bitcoin Day.
Exactly. Should have brought it out on Wednesday, I guess. But I thought I'd save it for this.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
Yeah,
we had him come co-host with us. But
so we got the guys from Unmapped here with us, in town from Empower and from the UK. Glad to have you guys here. I'm so glad you reached out and you were like, "Hey, we're only gonna be here. Can we just come by?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it, man. I love it."
International. We're an international show now.
International.
It's great.
Man.
Thanks for having us. And
absolutely,
this is our first podcast. So yeah, hope to.
Oh, this is your first one.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of kept our heads down, just working on finding opportunities and finding our story and narrative. But yeah, I think it's nice to talk and nice to explore ideas. So happy to be here. Love what you guys put on. In fact, it was the first conference we did when we signed our first deal last year after we closed our seed round. So yeah, this was straight in the deep end, and it was great to be in an energy environment around Bitcoin mining. So thank you for that.
Absolutely,
back for that again.
This year, I'll just say, I mean, this is my first time to comment. We're like, it's literally the day after Empower when we're recording now, and I'm exhausted. My voice is like super deep. I'm like barely slept. But no, the feedback has been super amazing. It's like a really, really like great community, and just super excited. I mean, I'll tell anybody, this stuff was like very accidental. Like Empower last year was supposed to be a backyard barbecue. 100 of our closest friends from energy, from Bitcoin mining. We got linked up, probably a year and a half ago. Griffin, Parker, it was just crazy. Just like we just didn't know how much momentum there was kind of like behind the scenes, and then it turned into what it became. And then this year, the feedback on the new venue was great. We did it at 713. It was like, I guess the best way to describe it was like last year was very festival style grassroots, right? We're all in the mud together, you know what I mean? And
literally,
then, quite literally.
It rained. And the whole first day.
This year was like, hey, we all like grew up, went to college, and like now we're treating Bitcoin as like a profession, And then, but it's also like still like a really cool environment. So, if you were at Empower and you're listening, thank you for being there. Seriously, it was an amazing success. I can't wait to come back and do it again next year. I'm already tired thinking about it. But anyways, so you guys are from the UK, but you guys have your first site here in the US, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, in the UK, I guess because we're based there, and when we were looking at where we want to start mining, so firstly, our approach coming into this was Bitcoin mining is, financial empowerment. We know the story in so many different ways. Very passionate about that. But the way we wanted to approach this was, okay, well, you can see how the ecosystem is working right now. We see a move towards more responsible energy going hand in hand and quite synonymous. And we had a brief conversation about this earlier. We are stuck with an energy system that has, it conducts itself in a certain way, has its own challenges, in some ways is clumsy. And I think Bitcoin mining serves as a really, really interesting catalyst to move that conversation and move a lot of the innovation a bit more quickly. And got quite passionate about that. So I guess looking at the opportunities that we wanted to explore, the US steamed like the obvious place, the whole kind of China ban happened. So the attention was here, and I think there are some really interesting assets for us to look at and partners. We started off needing, partners and resources to get going. And so, our main focus of search was here. I think in terms of, jurisdiction and the risk associated with that as well, it ticked a box for us. Again, it's impossible to mine in the UK. I mean, energy prices are ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, that was the focus, and then we found our first partner, first site, which is on a stranded gas site, which in the whole kind of, if we talk clean end of the spectrum, we see how to better utilize methane as a very important use case for Bitcoin mining and service to energy. So yeah, that's kind of like distilled down like how we ended up here, and continue to look for sites, partners over here. But I think the difference we've noticed as well with a lot of miners we've met here, not just at the conference, but more widely, is it's a lot of eggs in just this industry. And I get it, because there's so much energy and so much opportunity, but we are looking at opportunities outside, so Latin America, the Middle East, maybe even Africa. I mean, we're quite open to it, to balancing the sort of country risk as well. And I think given this, maybe this is a segue into this conversation about the proposal that was made yesterday about tax or excise on Bitcoin mining activities through their energy consumption, which I find is, let's see if that goes through, but it's daft. And so, it is also kind of risky in this environment to have, the whole entire focus and sole focus just in the US.
Yeah, and that's right. It is. And even that shows, that's a really good point, because, we saw some of these things happen with like I am tired too. Geopolitical risk over the past few years. Compass had an issue with a mining site in Russia. There's been other ones, Kazakhstan, different areas where miners have ended up being impacted because they made investment into areas of risk, like riskier countries. And with what they announced yesterday, like this effort from the Biden administration, that obviously would make the U.S. one of those risky places, because
it would kill the industry.
It would kill the
industry. It would 100%
industry.
kill the industry.
And that is what I think the intent is. I don't think we should play any games with it. It's a serious thing. And so, we need to make sure we're vocal and getting out there, kind of fighting against that. And I guess I'll give a plug here for Satoshi Action Fund, but that's why we have lobbying groups. And this is exactly the type of situation that I know a lot of people in the Bitcoin community want to stay away from politics, which I hate politics, but it's almost like you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And you have to get in front of it, and you can't sit back on the sidelines and just be like, I'm sticking my head in the sand, because at the end of the day, this stuff is the reality that we got to live with, and it's the law of the land, and you're going to have to end up finding a way. You got to combat it early on, because if you don't, you're going to be kind of stuck with what is put down. And it's a scary situation, but it's also something people need to think about from the standpoint of like the slippery slope kind of precedent this would be setting. If we want the government coming in and dictating based on whoever's administration is in power, the morality of energy use and what is acceptable and what is not, we are setting ourselves up for a very, very dangerous situation in the future. And I don't want to sound hyperbolic and ridiculous, but that's exactly what it is, in my opinion. So we need to be very serious about it and be vocal and organize and make sure that we, put together an effort to fight this and educate the public too.
Well, like we were talking about right before we were recording, is the administration's talking out both sides of its mouth, right? We have all these super ambitious dreams, essentially, that we want to get to a certain thing around net zero, and what you guys are doing with any sort of like stranded gas, that's methane. It's going straight into the air, and they're essentially saying we want to kill you.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, do you want this or do you not?
Yeah.
You can't have both. This is literally the best tool to be able to lower a significant amount of emissions here in the United States, and we're putting into something like we're building out energy infrastructure. We're pushing, like, Bitcoin mining is energy infrastructure, and there's just so much innovation that's happening because of the energy consumption. And then I talked about it on Alana's documentary on Dirty Coin. She asked me about some stuff on energy consumption, and I was like, proof of work energy consumption is the point. You can't counterfeit it. Like, if you want to have like the best currency in the world that is cryptographic, you have to have that. Like, the whole proof of stake work just does not fucking work.
Right.
So we were just missing the point. So going back to what you said, it's education, so it's it's the documentary, it's Satoshi Action Fund. And I love what Dennis, we had dinner last night with some kind of core group of people that are helping support that. And Dennis kind of made some analogies to the marijuana industry of like things being decriminalized or even legalized in like a majority of the states, like 75% of the states. There's at least bills, if it's not already legalized there, it's going to be legalized soon, but federally it's illegal. And so he wants to kind of take that same playbook and go to the states, and they're having a lot of success just state by state getting things, just pro Bitcoin mining legislation.
Which is very good. But I think this is more dangerous in that situation because the federal government, while those laws are still in place, they're not enforcing them. And that has been even acknowledged by the Biden administration that they're not going to enforce a lot of the, federal regulations against marijuana possession at certain levels of it. But this is one that is a direct attack on Bitcoin. But you're right. I mean, that's why we need like groups like Satoshi Action Fund and some of the others that are out there that are trying to fight that battle. And they are doing a great job at the state level. This shows the need for the federal level as well, that we have to really protect against this, because I do think that the energy consumption is like the biggest issue in the world. Whether or not, regardless of what we think, what side we're on it, it is probably the biggest issue that is discussed in the world. And it doesn't seem to have much of a in-between ground, even though I think the reality is most of us live in the in-between ground, but the voices that are controlling the narratives are very far apart. And so you got one that is going to go after it, and you got one that is hopefully sitting there and organizing and helping to kind of fortify that position. But it's the people in the middle that we have to educate, because those two sides ultimately, even though it doesn't feel like it all the time, they are dictated by the people in the middle, and we have to get them educated.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people in the industry understand now how Bitcoin mining can be a tool. But
Right.
everyone outside it just sees us as parasitic, right?
Mhm.
And we're very much of the view that we really can be this tool. And where you go and you provide the most value to the existing energy industry is also where you'll probably find the cheapest energy, and likely over the long term where Bitcoin miners will persist.
Mhm.
But if as a country you say no, we don't want that Bitcoin mining, then you're taking that tool out of your toolkit, and that tool will go and be used somewhere else, and miners will just filter down and do that elsewhere, like in Latin
Right.
America or in the Middle East. And so that it's just
You saw that in China. Everybody just packed up their shit and left. You know, it's
and
like
you're right.
you gotta do the
It's
same
true.
thing here.
Yeah, they'll do it, and they're going to be the ones that profit from it. And that's where I'm like, why
Yeah.
are we shooting ourselves in the foot like this?
I think so. I think, oh God, there's so many ways to chop this up. But firstly, you've got this stigma that everyone has painted by the media that, Bitcoin is consuming so much energy without understanding, okay, how we consume energy. We can't consume energy at the level or prices that everyone else is. So we're this kind of marginal buyer of energy, and hence creating all these, innovations like, or services, let's say, load balancing that, the energy industry desperately needs. If you look at net zero targets, again, we were talking briefly about this earlier, who was, addressing leaking methane, flared gas, like, how about those goals towards net zero? Bitcoin is a very, very sort of realistic answer to a lot of that. So these proposals come at a time where even the policymakers are lacking the education, and I think that's a shame. And well, if you look at this from a 70,000 foot down, okay, I also don't think that having all this concentration of hash in the US is healthy generally for Bitcoin. Maybe it does need to get decentralized a little bit more, but the amount of experience that Bitcoin mining and maturity that it can advance by being in the US and having a stable environment to start to look at ways of complementing other industries. Like, we're at the starting point of deciding what we do with our heat and seeing how that can be a service to other industries and creating a nice sustainable loop there. Stabilizing the grid, which are then able to take away and apply that to other industries. So if we get the opportunity to just actually sort of do the work and actually become part of the fabric, I think that would be a shame to cut that short by narrow thinking right now. I think so. Yeah, I think it's we need to take this seriously. I think education is important. Lobbying, you can't divorce yourself from politics. I think it's necessary.
As much as we want to. Unfortunately.
I hate being a
with
part of
energy.
it, but
Oh.
like we have to.
Yeah,
we have to. We
We
really
do.
don't have another option. And FUD comes from just a misunderstanding. It's a lack of education, and it's unfortunate that people don't really, particularly when you're wanting to propose certain things that have major implications. that you don't just dig in a little bit, you know, you don't just, I don't know, take a week and read the Bitcoin Standard. Like, just like,
That's the best advice I can give
Yeah,
anyone
just-
right now.
just- just read it, you know,
Yeah.
and if you still don't like it, then all right, cool. That's your
Yeah.
opinion, you know,
Yeah.
but it's,
I agree, but I wish I would have brought my tinfoil hat that was given to me at
oh
the
man,
conference.
well, I'm
'Cause
gonna bring some foil.
I know we're gonna make
Yeah.
some awesome ones, but I think that the FUD at a certain level is not just even uneducated. It's some of them have read the Bitcoin Standard and they know the threat that it can be to the current existing financial system, and that's part of why they're going after this. And
Do you think, I mean, you gotta think about, like, I mean, who's giving them money? You know, is it a
Right.
lot of the banks, you know, who are
well,
obviously
a lot of them are the
CBDCs?
governments and banks that are the ones that are the most vulnerable to.
As of today, the banks are not doing very well.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
no power. So a quick side note, Silicon Valley Bank has actually paused
Right.
transactions or withdrawals from there.
Wow.
And I literally just wired out, we have Silicon Valley Bank and we had transferred over to Brex. And our vendors didn't know that we switched banks and they had paid some of our stuff from Empower. And so I wired out a significant amount of money 3 days ago
Wow.
out of SVB. And then some of the founders that we know were just tweeting, hey, thanks to SVB for locking up all of our cash. I can't pay anybody, can't spend any money. Yeah. They're down like 90% in like the last like 2 days.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
run
because was it Silver Lake that went bankrupt?
Silvergate. Yeah.
Silvergate. Okay. Yeah. And that's just had like this ripple effect. And so JP Morgan's down, like everybody's down, like massive amounts. So
The world is crazy.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
It's like I need my hat again.
it's like just
'Cause
when you think it can't get any
I-
worse, it's like, oh, it does.
Yeah. It's wild. Like I don't, man, this is going to get to be the conspiracy theory show. Because I'm like, so, you know, there's so much weird, strange, just energy in the air to me. And that I feel like there's a lot coming down the line. Have you ever read The Fourth Turning? And you read it. Because
It's
it
synopsis.
feels like this is very much described in that book. And it's an older book. I think it was written
He's
in
like
the
along the
90s.
lines of like 1984.
Kind of, but it's almost like predicting cycles of like
Yeah.
governments and civilizations and kind of how they work, and they kind of recycle themselves every 80 years or so. And you start
We're
going through
really
the
past
same
our expiration
problems.
date in the United
We
States.
are, but this is also very much in line with kind of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and kind of that cycle that we're coming into, a lot of social unrest and like financial problems and debt problems and things like that. And it's like, man, I think that this is happening again.
I find it, I mean, you said like, ask someone just to take a bit of time and read the Bitcoin Standard. But I find right now we've almost been given a gift of a situation like through COVID with the sheer amount of increase in supply of the dollar, inflation that we're being experiencing right now, not just in the US, across the board. It's the best time to actually have this conversation about, the deflationary dynamics of Bitcoin, how it differs, and how, a system this way that needs the work to happen, to validate, the value is necessary. So yeah, I find those conversations why I have a lot of people like, hey, are you okay? Bitcoin, like question mark. And it's a very, very interesting and very empowering conversation to have with them. I find so, but it's slow.
What do you think on that? Because, and I know we need to get into talk about your company, actually, but I'm enjoying this conversation. But a lot of people have kind of tried to kill that argument about Bitcoin being, protection against inflation. What are your thoughts? And I want to tell you guys mine after I hear yours, but unless yours is like way better than mine, then I'll just be like, oh yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, you can look at it from the markets and have those dynamics. And I think in the last few years, you've seen more institutional money come in. And so when, you have risk on or risk off situations, Bitcoin tends to flow with that right now. But when you look at the actual architecting of it, I mean, again, just reading it and understanding it from logic, it goes the other way. So my bet is, on this inflation conversation into the long term. So yeah, if there's short-term blips, and it follows everything else. I don't really have an answer, or I can with money flows. But ultimately, I would say even anyone that's looking at Bitcoin, when they ask me, "Oh, are you worried about Bitcoin now?" I'm like, get a framing for what Bitcoin is into the long term.
Right.
Yeah? Have that vision or hypothesis, because otherwise you'll just get swayed by what's happening.
Yeah, you blow in the wind.
Yeah, just get that right. If you get that right, you'll understand everything else, and you'll know how to play in the volatility that we have constantly. So it's more difficult to answer the question like, okay, it's breaking the mold in the short term, but I think the long term it will play out just based on its fundamentals.
We also, I think you had stepped out for a second, but we glossed over the fact that he's like classically trained as an economist.
Oh, okay.
So like
perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. So your opinion carries a lot more weight, I think,
than mine. Well, and I have looked at it from a shorter time frame. Even I still would almost argue that it has acted that way, despite the drop from 69,000 to 17, 16, whatever, it got down to 15, whatever. When we started printing dollars in March of 2020, which look, and I'm going to probably offend some people, but I don't really care at all. Donald Trump has been just as responsible for the amount of money that we've been printing over the past several years as Joe Biden. In fact, I think he probably did more. But again, I don't care about the politics of it. It's a reality. And the point I'm bringing up is that it doesn't matter what administration is in there. Our government does this regardless. And so,
historically, every government has historically.
Right. Yeah. So it's like we got two sides of the same coin, in my opinion. And right now, or in 2020, March of 2020, I don't know if you guys remember, Bitcoin was down around $4,000. So it is now, after all the money printing, and even despite the drop we're at, 3 years later, we're at $20,000 Bitcoin. That is a protection against inflation. I don't know why it seems to not be treated that way now all of a sudden, and people like point at the fact that it's dropped from 69 to 20. I think the run to 69 was obviously a lot of the like frothiness that happens when people get excited and they see something run up like that. Mm-hmm. But like now we're back to a price that is probably where the price should be around in a depressed, bear market. Okay, that's where we're at. We see the cycles in oil and gas. It's a cyclical, commodity-driven kind of price environment. That's what it does. And I think Bitcoin acts a lot like a commodity. Would you agree on that? Especially from your economic background, that's way better than mine. I'm from Bumpkin, Missouri. So
yeah, definitely. When something that I like. Again, it's got mixed buy-in, but stock to flow. Whether you buy into the kind of valuation predictions, that's a separate argument. But like when you look at how commodities behave cyclically, and you apply stock to flow methodology to that, and you look at all the sort of the history of metals, precious metals, they've all sort of been able to be modeled quite easily and effectively through that. And so I think Bitcoin does fit that mold. It's got fixed supply, as we kind of assume with a lot of minerals in the earth, and the flow is what is able to come to market. So yeah, it's you couldn't define it more perfectly as a quantity, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good for a redneck from Missouri. I'll take it as a victory. All right, we need to talk about your company.
Excellent.
So yes, you guys, give kind of the overview. I know you got a project in the U.S., but just kind of tell everybody who you guys are and what you're looking for and kind of the goals of the company and all that.
Okay. Yeah. Actually,
and your backgrounds. Actually, I didn't know you were an economist. So
So look, I'll give you a quick background as well, and Mike too. So I actually grew up in Kenya. So
did you really?
Yeah, I did.
Dude, Marshall was talking about Kenya yesterday.
I saw that.
He's a buddy of ours, and I love listening to him. He's hilarious. First of all, he talks shit to me constantly, but he talked shit to me on stage like 4 or 5 times yesterday. So, but he's awesome, and the way he described Kenya was just like I gotta go. Like I gotta go there.
You've got to. Yeah. And if he hasn't already invited you, I'll invite you as well.
Awesome.
It's brilliant to hear. About Grillis and some of the projects that they were talking about was great. A developing economy like that has so many more challenges of off-grid energy needs generally, because most people just don't have access to electricity, and projects can't get greenlit out there. So it's very interesting to see how they're applying Bitcoin mining out there. But more generally, I mean, I guess I was lucky to have a front row seat at seeing the innovation of M-Pesa, which brought digital money and empowerment to so many people. So I actually think because of that, Bitcoin adoption and education can be a lot easier in an economy like that. So, anyways, grew up in Kenya, came to the UK, studied there as an economist, but this fascination with how people are not financially empowered and don't have access to bank accounts. I mean, this was pre-mobile phones and no access to sort of connection with others. I think the need for me for this world to have a universal money that serves everyone is a big sort of cause. It sits really well with me. I think this needs to happen. And so my observation of the hard currencies, as I saw it from growing up in Kenya, that was always an aspiration to own a dollar or a pound as opposed to a depreciating currency. And learning more about the fiat, when you start looking into it, all these holes appear. So when I first came across Bitcoin, it just ticked so many boxes for me. I was like, this is obvious, but okay, how do we get adoption of this? And this was really, really early, early-ish for me, 2014. But I also saw the application from a decentralized tech perspective of, we have voting systems that we really question. I mean, you question them here, bloody hell. I mean, in Kenya, it's way worse, and you have
they just erase it and put it on the other side.
I don't get in trouble. But yeah, but then we have land registry, which just you don't trust, and any transactional system. I think there's so much application. And Bitcoin is that foundational layer. It's that legacy one to be the example. So, anyways, that's the backstory of kind of why I'm really passionate and interested in this space. And I've been an entrepreneur in the past, and after exiting businesses that I had in retail and restaurants, I really wanted to spend my time on something I really believed in that would help serve the planet better. And so then, what is Unmapped? Unmapped then merges helping to push the Bitcoin conversation and architecting that forward by being active in mining and helping enable that, because it's still quite a nascent industry. There's so much more that needs to happen. But we see clean and renewable energy as sort of synonymous with that. We're equally passionate about how the world needs to evolve around that. I think it's definitely a slow process. I mean, we operate a certain way. We have certain needs, as humans. But I think, just again, using logic, which I think is so beautiful when you have an example of what Bitcoin is, to then look at energy, when we're able to store energy effectively and you have an abundant source of free energy, as the sun or wind, it's daft that, those systems won't take play. And, again, the world is not just in environments like America, which have very established energy systems, but are most of the world that don't have access to energy or that are remote. And so off-grid energy grids, I think, become very, very important in the future. And those are, the renewable conversation now. How close they are, I don't know. So then we did a seed round last year. We have a bunch of investors, including some lead VCs, and we set out to start mining. And where did we look? We looked at the US, and we found a partner in a site in Colorado, which is a stranded gas site. Starting to work a lot closer with that gas operator, because this is a pilot for them as well. And if that works, that'll start opening up more sites.
How did you, not to interrupt you, but how did being in the UK, particularly not even being from the oil and gas industry, like how did you guys discover this partner? Like what was that process like? Was it just very serendipitous, like maybe you'd already known them or through connections, or was it like,
I think
who's flaring gas? I'm just curious, because it's like such a big disconnect.
Like that. I mean, I think I'll let Mike talk to this, because he kind of heads business development, and whole energy exploration for us. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think I'm quite passionate about is what you guys do, which is bringing people together in the industry. I think there's more needed, and a sense of community and partners are what we seek, and that's what we've been very proactive to go sort of about. And so, yeah, I mean, Mike, maybe you want to talk about that initial process of trying to identify partners.
Yeah, I mean,
well, especially not coming from the oil and gas space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because I bet oil and gas guys are like, how the hell do I find some stranded gas?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah, I know,
this
yeah.
is what I should know.
Naively, if I said, okay, yeah, I really want to be a Bitcoin miner, and I came in thinking that, we'll just buy energy. God, that's a completely wrong assumption. I mean, you've got to be, I'd say in a few years' time, if someone asked me, are you in Bitcoin mining or energy? I should be struggling to answer that question.
Yeah,
I think they go hand in hand, and you
They do.
can't. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we've had to really learn, and upskill ourselves, and just a lot to know.
yeah. No, I mean, I think the learning mainly came from starting to do the modeling, to be honest, the financial modeling. We started off, honestly, maybe thinking that we were going to go to one of the really big hosters in the game. Nothing wrong with them. But when you're trying to build a Bitcoin mining company, I don't think it's the best place to scale yourself. We started looking at that and looking at economics through the halving, looking at how hash rate was growing and thinking what makes a defensible company, where do we need to set ourselves up and at what sort of costs. And that led us to move away from those and just sort of start to move down the chain of how do we get our costs down and where should we be looking. It's sort of what's built out the ethos in the company of, okay, we need to find ideally where there's free energy or where there's energy that's being wasted, and that's where it's going to be the cheapest. And that's sort of what led us into that space. I mean, I think actually finding the site was serendipitous. I can't claim to solve that formula, and if I did, I think I'd be selling that rather than working for Adarsh. But we're working on that constantly and trying to figure out how can we be the most benefit to the energy system around us to help them make their projects more financially viable, but help us by getting cheap energy. That's sort of the aim.
How big a project is it? The Colorado one?
Yeah. So the first site is just a 2 megawatt site.
Mm-hmm.
So using that to build out, show what we can do, and then we've got a lot of discussions ongoing at the moment for a further pipeline.
Yeah, look, 2 megawatts. People I get calls all the time from people I want to get into mining, and we're wanting to build a 12 megawatt mine, 10 megawatt. I'm like, dude, that's a huge endeavor.
Have you ever plugged in the
massive.
ASIC before?
Right.
Yeah.
Or have you ever
We should
even
rock
seen
first.
a flare gas site,
sure.
or a well site?
Yeah.
And do you know how few well sites you could go build a 10 or 12 megawatt mine on? I don't know hardly any of them. So there's not very many in the U.S. You guys have probably figured this out, but of all the gas that is being flared in the U.S., it's 98% is intermittent flaring, is non-routine flaring, right? Very little of it is actually routine flaring that you can build a 2 megawatt mine on. Very little of it. And so that's a nice size project. It's a great project starting off. So I don't think there's anything to sneeze at about that. That's a legit project.
Yeah, no, I think, and even for us, we realize also, in some respects, if we were building it ourselves, I think we would probably need to sort of get 0.5 megawatt live, then, the full, and there are 1 megawatt sort of containers that we used. We decided to also kind of go down the route of exploring immersion cooling as well to see, okay, how can we get the most out of the capex that we're putting in, and looking at energy efficiency as well. It's an area that we just wanted to get on top of, because if you are able to successfully do that, I think you can create some very interesting models. And then adding on to what Mike said, coming into this, we're like, okay, how do we really secure ourselves in the long term? And if you have energy variability in cost, and you don't have security over it, and you're plugging into the grid like everyone else. We didn't really see that as defensible, but also a story that we could really sell and tell. And, in order to scale, we do need capital, and we need partners that, understand what we're trying to do. But the idea of also testing this is to see, okay, well, there's lots of talk of capturing the heat, and I think you can do a lot more efficiently with immersion cooling. And then what other use cases are there? Now, I don't think we'll have a use case really at this site unless someone comes to us. But, we've seen some case studies in Europe with a couple of partner companies that we're exploring something with on, district heating applications, which we find very interesting. So, that is also another direction that we do want to explore. But I think, let's start with the nuts and bolts. Let's get, walking first, and then we can start running. But we are looking for new sites. We're looking for partners and JVs, and we are actually in the process of managing our roadmap and sort of capital expenditure. We've come across some really interesting opportunities, which are a little bit larger than what we would be able to say take on right now. What we're also trying to do is this first site is a co-location site where we're being hosted, but this is us starting to want to skill ourselves up and build our own vertically integrated team that will be able to manage our own rigs. So we have even more control over that process. We want to own the energy as well, which is again this exploration we're having with this gas company, and that's the ability for us to then look at larger sites where we can host other miners. We're looking at this with a very open mind. We're talking to other miners on taking capacity in certain sites that they have. Our only remit is, a high clean content. So if it's grid based and it's in the middle of a region that has just a small percentage of renewable mix, that won't tick the box for us. So that's why we like projects like stranded gas or hydro. Nuclear I think is also super interesting. I think it's definitely something that has negative rap like gas, but I think it has huge merit if it's managed well in the future.
Do you guys, when you pitch, are you pitching it like, what is your pitch? Or is it like, hey, we're providing a load for renewable sources, we're mitigating flare? Like, do you come in pitching we're Bitcoin miners and what we're doing, we're mining Bitcoin?
So I think if you do that, then you then put in not just you're mining a commodity, but
they take their tinfoil hat out and put it on you.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
you're a commodity mining proposition, that you're a commodity business. So you have to have an interesting story. And so I think what investors, from what I'm observing, want to see is they want to see stability and pipeline at the minimum. So I think you need to own the relationship, so they know that, okay, if I'm investing in this company and investing in capital, that capital has a secure home and it has a secure source of energy. So it will become almost like ticking how you're de-risking the assessment of that business. But what we're trying to do is, I think there's a whole pool of capital in climate VC, which will start to look more favorably at this, on the fringes of enabling, renewable projects or methane capture, and so Crusoe have done very well with that, and I floated the idea or the direction with a couple of investors around utilizing the heat and creating these like closed sustainable sort of loops, and I mean that they love that, so it's just a matter of, okay, how do we make this work so it's a sort of profitable situation, but it's a value proposition that we're proposing partners, and then at the end it's something that we can sell. I mean, I think it's definitely the back of our mind. I mean, we're not just plugging in at all costs. Like Mike said, our first approach was to look at the financials, and there are miners that are offering sites at 6 or 7 cents. I don't know. I struggle with that a bit. I don't know how
to
make the economics work. And then,
I don't either. I don't get it.
I see on the retail side, retail miners being, pitched like 8 cents to 12 cents and, taking contract.
I think honestly, some of them are just wanting to stack non-KYC Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I just do. And because there's no other explanation to me of why you could do that. But you can't do it profitably at that, especially at the retail level.
You get to, a year down the line at the halving. And
right. Oh my gosh.
I mean, wow, toast again.
It's terrifying. Like right now, I mean, we're going to be sub 3 cents or close to sub 3 cents if it would happen today,
What's the motivation for having non-KYC Bitcoin?
just you have Bitcoin that's accumulated that is not you didn't buy it off an exchange, so it's kind of like you're accumulating your own money that you can then do what you want with. Now you still have tax obligations, whatever, that's the individual's deal, but you still have those obligations, but it's just like, I mean,
It's like going to the taco stand paying cash.
Right. Yeah, they have an obligation to report their income, right? But yeah, so that's some people do want that. Like that's the reason why some people could I guess swallow the fact that right now you're losing money on that, but they think in the future the value proposition of having that Bitcoin is going to be worth that loss right now to have that amount of non-KYC Bitcoin in the future. Would be my
I think you're probably right.
Can they not do that through like a hash rate contract or something? Why tie yourself up in a 3-year complicated?
So that you're right, but like when I think about the everyday person, you know what I mean? That's like the same thing when I've heard people be like, well, why do people need Bitcoin in Africa? They could just go exchange their currency for dollars. It's like, get out of here, dude. They don't know how to do that. It's a lot easier to just go, I'll go get a miner and I'll mine some Bitcoin and I'll get Bitcoin. We do tend to, like us that are educated, sometimes we'll look like this stuff seems like common sense, normal.
I mean, I give you the example of Kenya. So like, if there were exchange controls, so if you wanted to own a dollar, you had to go through a black market, and this is the case in many economies. And you don't get the dollar rate, you get a black market valuation, which is a premium. So effectively what you're saying is no different to that. You're saying, okay, well, I want to lock money away and I'm happy to pay the premium on top of, so I'll pay 12 cents, and so my Bitcoin is not at whatever you're mining it at, 17, 18,000. Maybe it's at 25,000. I'm comfortable with that. That's my tax I'm paying to own this, and it's secure away from prying eyes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the reality, that is a challenge.
Yeah, and as a business though, you can't really operate that way, and that's where I'm like, how are these guys doing this? I don't see it, but
yeah, I think it just the answer there is a lot of just like really really deep pockets,
right?
A lot of foreign money,
right? Yeah, that true. I mean, I think some of them just whether they're owned by some type of investors that just theoretically want the same type of thing. Like we'll keep making Bitcoin at a loss right now, but it's tough. Like some of these big miners, obviously we've seen tons of them go down, but I think the longer this goes on, obviously, and we get closer to halving, if there's not some serious price appreciation, it's gonna be a bloodbath when the halving occurs.
Just on KYC, I'm curious about this because being a UK company, I mean the red tape and KYC hurdles we have to cross are immense. I mean, even onboarding investors, and I mean this is our view moving forward. Like if we were to start hosting, probably institution, but if we went down the spectrum of retail, anyone really, there would be an element. I mean, there would be a serious element of KYC that we would implement as well. Is that necessarily being done here? Because I my mind here personally, I mean, prior to starting Unmapped, and I didn't face a single question.
Yeah. So when I started, I had a mining company a couple years ago. Well, I guess 3 years ago that we started, and we did have a KYC process through your pool. Because our pool would supply some information. Because I always wanted to figure out like how is this going to be looked at, and like what areas do you how's your audit going to work? I guess like how's the audit going to work, and how are we going to report things and whatnot? And the pool level is where we had the KYC, and then with the banks as well, like we had Wells Fargo, we had KYC with Wells Fargo, and so we had to report our income, which we did, and I looked at it that way. I'm like, well, there is a KYC process in place there. The reality, though, and I'm sure there are mining groups out there that don't abide by that. You can do your own pool. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways you could probably get around that. I'm not endorsing those. I'm not saying I'm trying to get outside of the system or anything like that, especially at the business level. But the KYC process is a lot looser here, I would say, than probably the UK or some of the European countries. But I mean, it's not a robust one, I don't think, but there is a process through your pool, assuming like we use Foundry, like we KYC with them, and there's kind of that process. But I mean, it's from a kind of regulatory institutional level, I think that's part of what's going to come down the line, and there's going to be a much more robust KYC process, whether we like it or not. I think that's probably one of the trade-offs we're going to have to start making when we're fighting battles like the one we were talking about earlier with, the tax conversation. Like it's going to continue to be a bigger kind of area or subject that is on everybody's radar. And so I think there's going to be some regulation that comes to the industry, which is not, and might rub some people the wrong way, it's not necessarily a bad thing for Bitcoin adoption. I think it might actually, in the long run, be better for it, because as long as it's reasonable, rational regulation, and 30% excise tax off the bat is not that. That's a deal killer. And so, I think that regulation is coming. We need to get out in front of it. KYC process is probably going to get more robust. We're running institutional level mining operations. Like that's if you want to be a big boy business, you're gonna have to abide by some of the big boy rules. And I think it's just inevitable that is going to come. Yeah. And
I'm as libertarian as it comes, but a certain amount of regulation is kind of a good thing. And you can't make the assumption, while I think 99% of this community is great people, and very wholesome, there are a few bad apples, of course. That kind of run it for all of us. You've seen something in the oil and gas space, particularly people who are going out there as what I would kind of call promoters, right? It's like, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to chop this up into some sort of fund, and we're essentially devaluing your stake. We're chopping in some carry and some equity for ourselves for promoting this thing. And like, you're going to have some shit that's just going to go south, and it's going to ruin for a lot of the people that were investing with them and participating with them and shit like that. So you need a nice little bit of regulation. That there's a little bit of give and take. Nothing too crazy. Nothing like what we're seeing on the taxation side. But
that's not even a conversation starter. That's a slap in the face. It's ridiculous. It's like, man, come on, stop. This is like one of the somebody who's extreme. I don't know. I've known. When I coached, I had kids like that sometimes. Or when I was teaching, it would be like, come on, man. Like parents come in and saying stuff. You're like, get out. This is not even a conversation. We can't have this discussion. Like not if that's your starting point. So, I think with the regulation, as long as it's reasonable, you're going to see more institutional level capital come into the industry. And that, because I think that's what a lot of them are waiting on, is wanting to see what's going to happen with the tax situation. Is this, why am I getting taxed on Bitcoin production that I haven't monetized in the dollar system yet? And it's just like gold. When I go mine gold, I'm not getting taxed on what I've mined until I monetize it. So why are we doing that? If I don't sell my oil, what are you taxing me on? I haven't sold it for anything yet. And so
what was the old saying back when we fought you guys in the war? We won. Taxation without representation. Right. If you think about like the tax that we were fighting against, like with the Tea Party, was 3%. And it's like, it's so crazy now, just the amount of taxes that we pay on like so many different things.
But it had actually got up. I want to say at one point it was like 50-some%. We had crazy high tax. Like later on, not that long ago, really. I think 50s or something like that. And it's like, man,
it starts getting silly when it gets to that.
Right. It's like, this is insane. Obviously, it's came back down, but yeah, I mean, when we get that stuff kind of worked out, I think institutional dollars will come in, assuming we don't have this crazy ass kind of tax stuff going on.
I mean, you're right. The number of people that got burnt in this last 12 months that had big pots of money that I just don't think they're going to return until that regulation.
The FTX thing had major ripple effects, because anybody who was kind of on the verge or just starting to kind of like play in kind of just the crypto space altogether was just like, now all of it's a scam, all of it's a fraud. Bitcoin kind of just gets lumped into that category. I hate actually when Bitcoin is conflated with crypto. I think it's two totally different conversations. I try to, for somebody who's new, I try to make that that explanation. That's one of my first points. You know, there is no
Right.
CEO, there is no board, there's no team.
There's no
nobody's getting paid.
underlying business.
Yeah,
You know what
there's
I
no
mean? And
business.
this whole thing about the securities that, you know, altcoins and securities, and is Bitcoin that too? And I had somebody ask me that at that dinner last night, and I don't think at all. There's no underlying business. I don't know what you would be selling a security in Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? I do understand that argument in regards to altcoins, but you're selling a coin for your platform. That is like a security. I get that. I understand how that can be tied to
It's
it.
literally the definition of
It's
security.
right. So it's like, okay, I don't get it. Why that's even an argument, you know? But with Bitcoin, it's like, you know, if they're trying to drag that in the conversation, which it sounds like they have been, it's like that's not going to fly.
And I mean, it sounds like in the last few days as well, like the spotlight on Ethereum having moved to proof of stake is that it's you know, they can't definitively say that it's not a security now. Like if they'd stuck versus if they'd stuck to proof of work, which is where, no, I'd agree with you. I think, you know, Bitcoin is it's a unique entity.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's I don't know. Alana, I visited with her yesterday, interviewed with her too. And I'm really looking forward to that documentary because I think she's getting a lot of good people in there to really help educate folks on the difference of Bitcoin versus everything else and what it actually is. I'm really excited about that.
I'm super excited. I was honored that she wanted to include us, and so it was great having her on the podcast and visiting with her at Empower, and just we spent a lot of time just talking. It's like we couldn't talk about anything other than Bitcoin.
Right.
Every conversation kind of came back to it, and I loved it because she's out here, like I said, just spreading the gospel of Lord Satoshi. You know, and it's like, but that's how you fight. You know, that's how you fight misinformation. Is, you know, through education. You've got to do it in mediums where the masses are hanging out. You know, so in film and in podcast and blogs and social media and all of that, you know, and it's not just you know, up to a few people. It's up to all of us. We all have that power.
Can I say one more thing? Like you mentioned Satoshi, and okay, call him Lord, but like the beauty of Bitcoin as well is that there's no you know, like promoters taking center stage as well. It's I mean, you know, I have so much all for him or her, like clearly, you know, like not making it about an individual or you know, a handful of individuals, that it can then be this, you know, what Bitcoin has become, and you know, hopefully will continue to be. So important,
especially with the issue of having one individual at the top across crypto. That is just like, you know, look at like SBF or Do Kwon or like this is so many. It's amazing actually how many like villains there are in the crypto space. It's phenomenal.
It is. But it's funny because they're all trying, like they all saw Bitcoin, and it's like, ooh, I could do something like that. And it's almost like if you're doing that, you're going to give me a red flag. Like, you know what I mean? If you're promoting your platform and you're this and you're that, it automatically is a red flag for me. And I agree 100% with what you said, because how many other industries can you get up and, like, we talk in front of people, obviously, and do stuff like that. But I'm talking about Bitcoin. I own some Bitcoin, but I don't own Bitcoin, you know what I mean? And so I can go out there and promote all I want, but it's not doing anything for me specifically. And that is a huge difference. And there's not hardly any industries anywhere where that is the case. I'm getting excited because I talked about this with Lana too, is that I need my tinfoil hat. I seriously think, and when I got into the mining side of things, I don't know what it was, but I just felt like a weird calling, you know, and like I was supposed to do it. And I was just kind of like, you know what, we should talk off camera. I can't say all of it, but I had an experience, and I was like, I just have to do it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And I just pulled the trigger and did it. And didn't know what was going to happen. And it's all worked out great. And it doesn't mean there's not bumps and bruises along the way, but it's like, I feel like that's happening with a lot of people right now. And I noticed in the space, a lot of people who are in it now, they'll have a similar story of like, I don't know what it was. I just felt like I had to, because I think people do deep in your gut, you recognize the difference in Bitcoin and what it can actually do. And I'm not trying to I'm not worshiping it, but it's it's a powerful, powerful thing. You don't get things like this that come across, during your life all the time. Yeah. There's like moments that happen where you can see it and you can ignore it, or you can see it and you can recognize it for what it is and then go for it. And this is one of those where I'm like, I can feel a lot of people are starting to see it. Now, I know we could be in a vacuum because we all talk to each other a lot, but even getting outside when you start talking to people, because they feel it too, even if they're not in Bitcoin. They see what governments are doing around the world and the grabbing of rights and kind of taking things away from people and getting more intrusive from a government level and trying to monitor what are you doing? What's your carbon footprint? What's yours? And what are you watching? And what, a lot of this overreach that is happening is they feel things getting taken away from them. And Bitcoin is one of the most powerful things because it's giving you that freedom and power over your money, your ability. You're almost getting out of their system a little bit. Now you still can participate in it, but you're saying, I'm going to take this away from you and not give you all the financial power over what happens with my money and what I do. And people in like Africa, Turkey, Argentina, places like that.
Even Canada.
We
saw with the truckers, right?
Right. But these places too, where there's like the governments have taken, economic risks or made financial decisions or even just corruption from, currency manipulation, things like that. They are able to protect themselves from, they can go get paid in the morning and they can go buy Bitcoin immediately, because if they don't, by the time they get home and they've got to cook dinner, their money's worth less. And Bitcoin prevents that. And yes, it's volatile, but it doesn't even hold a candle to the volatility in some of these places just from inflation. Mm-hmm. And so the power that it gives to people around the world is indisputable in my mind. And I think people are feeling that, man. And so, yeah.
Power to the people. And I think everything you just said, I think, is the primary reason, and we could very much just be in our own little echo chamber, but we're all entrepreneurs, we're all builders in this space, we're all capitalists. When nobody's going around saying, hey, I'm going to be making, fucking billions of dollars doing this, it's always like, hey, we're all building to like kind of the greater good. And then like, yes, people will build substantial things in this space. Yeah. So I think that is actually really like refreshing and like actually like really cool, because we're all aligned in like this one mission. And not to, once again, like tinfoil hat thing, but like not sound like this is like a religion or a cult or something. Because I think you gotta come across that way sometimes. But like,
I know. I'll read stuff sometimes. I'm like, oh man, that sounds crazy. Like, if I remove Bitcoin and put like, people living on the moon or whatever, and it's like, oh crap, I'm gonna end up in a closet somewhere, like wearing some weird robe. I don't know.
But what's again great about this, if it is a belief system, which it could be, because like a universal way of thinking, it doesn't have like a central figure as well, which I like.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
it's cool things, but I can't agree more with what you've just said. I always find this interesting when I get people saying, "Oh, should I buy Bitcoin? Do you understand it?" And this goes to anything really. Like, why are you trading Apple? Like, if you want to buy it or buy the story, like, understand it. Like, and I mean, okay, then you can try and time me in the short term, but probably don't do that. Tesla, the same thing. But like, when it comes to Bitcoin, and they go and understand what it is, it's just they've just got a better toolkit to make that decision. I never want to ever tell someone. I wouldn't even tell them, buy it long term. No, just
I'm the same way. I don't tell anybody like. I'm telling anybody to go and buy Bitcoin. I want to like go and understand it.
My family as well. Like they're like, in a way, kind of concerned about some of the risks. Like, should I buy any? And I'm like, I think you should read this book. And simple as that, because I think that
I love that. I haven't thought of that for whatever reason, because I'm always like, I should. That's great. I'm going to start doing that.
I'm like, that's here's what I do and here's why, but you make your own decisions.
Yeah, because I understand it's so clear, like, and it's empowering others with education that they can, and that's I think a responsibility we have. Like, we've got to a certain level, but it was said a few times at the conference as well, we're scratching the surface. We've got such a long way to go. How will this ecosystem change? How will mining change? How will transaction fees come in play? Like, there's so many questions we have, but education is, and the understanding, be it politicians who just making decisions based on lack of it, or, most people have a view based on this. Just find your own opinion based on understanding the fundamentals.
Dude, I love it. That was great. That was
It's a great
super
soundbite.
dope.
That's going to make the
Yeah.
internet for sure.
Yeah, we need to definitely clip that one.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to cut. I know we usually go out longer, but I hate to cut it short. I got to bounce across town. But guys, this has been awesome.
It's been a
This
pleasure.
has been great. Thank you guys for coming in.
I was like
2
trying
years
to-
in a row. Thanks for coming in. I hate that I didn't get to meet you guys last year, but I'm so glad we got to catch up this year. Thank you for reaching out. Thanks for being a
Likewise.
part of this community.
I always
I'm
love
excited
talking
for
to
your story.
international dudes.
How do people find you? You guys on Twitter, LinkedIn? What's the website? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's unmapped.co. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Adarsh, Radia, Mike Walker. Connect with us. Connect with us for conversations in the US, outside the US, just generally. I think we really value what you guys have done as well by bringing community together. And I guess we really like that. We like having conversations with anyone. I think that's the beauty about the Bitcoin ecosystem is, magic happens when we talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always love talking to international folks, man. I'm always like, you bring another kind of
It's unique perspective.
Yeah. So I appreciate you guys coming.
No,
That
thank
was
you.
great, man.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Lovely talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, take 2 seconds, leave us a rating review, share it with all your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.